This is a comparison that no one asked me to do, but I wanted to do it anyway for reasons I'll explain. One of them is so you understand that the TCL C6K, also known as the QM6K in other countries, or the Q6C, while a very good example of mini LED technology, is not better than an OLED. In other words, it may be correct to say that for some people in terms of price-quality ratio, it is a better alternative. But in terms of brightness, colors, viewing angles, and performance in dark scenes, it will never be better than an OLED. Not even a more basic one. Here I'm comparing it to a top-of-the-line model from 2025, so you can see the significant difference that can exist. I'm not making this video to disappoint you about the C6K if you've already bought it. It's simply to bring you face-to-face with reality. This is obviously a fact, but many YouTubers and influencers don't tell you this and try to convince you that the C6K is better than any OLED TV, but it never will be. Understand that. Even so, I want you to know that the TCL C6K is an excellent example of its class. It's an LCD TV, meaning it has a liquid crystal display with vertical pixel alignment, meaning it's a VA panel. It features quantum dot color technology, and very importantly, its LED backlighting is direct full array LED with local dimming. And it also has the mini LED designation, which provides very good performance in dark scenes, but it will never be better than an OLED. I don't even consider it as close as other models. For example, the C8K, which is a higher-end model, is very close to what you would perceive on an OLED TV in dark scenes. And no, I'm not exaggerating. The camera isn't exaggerating either. It's just that when you see the TCL C6K on its own, without an OLED next to it, you'll think its performance in dark scenes is very good. In fact, it is. I personally like it a lot, and I'm very demanding in this area, but when you put an OLED next to it, even a more basic one, but I remind you that here I'm comparing a top-of-the-line model, which in this case would be a QD OLED, meaning it has quantum dots. The difference is simply abysmal, and you can't deny it. So even though you already bought the TCL C6K, this performance here, or this comparison here in dark scenes, undeniably shows that it will be much better for the one with OLED technology. And not only that, of course, in terms of brightness, the difference is simply overwhelming. It's very significant in favor of the QD OLED. However, from my point of view, the brightness of the TCL C6K is more than good, more than sufficient. It's also true that a larger C6K would have even more brightness, more dimming zones, and probably slightly better performance in dark scenes, but it will never be the same as this OLED TV or any other TV with OLED technology. In terms of brightness, it's likely comparable to some entry-level OLED TVs, but it will never beat a top-of-the-line model. However, as I've always said, such high brightness can also have drawbacks, such as increased energy consumption, greater eye strain, and of course more work or stress on the television's components, which obviously causes it to wear out faster in the future, although the manufacturers will never tell you that. In terms of gaming performance, they're both good. The difference here in favor of the S95F is that it supports 165 Hz in 4K, which would be ideal for a very powerful PC gaming graphics card. However, for video game consoles, both work well at 120 Hz at 4K. Regarding motion handling, I personally didn't notice significant differences, but they were there, and a computer or other gaming device would likely detect them. The OLED TV obviously has the advantage because it will have response times very close to zero. In other words, the color changes, or pixel movement, so to speak, will be much faster. But you can rest assured that the TCL C6K performs very well in terms of motion handling. Regarding image upscaling, I must say that the top-of-the-line S95F isn't going to perform miracles simply because it's a flagship model. As I mentioned before, no 4K TV will display 4K results when the content resolution is too low. In fact, I personally didn't notice any significant differences. There are some, but they're very minimal, obviously favoring the OLED. If the content has very low resolution, it will try to display fewer pixelated areas and a slightly smoother image. Regarding viewing angles, as I mentioned before, OLED TVs simply deliver perfect or near-perfect results. There's no doubt about it. You might say, but who watches a TV from the side? Well, if you're watching a football match or playing video games with family or friends who have to sit around the screen, because that's what's going to happen unless they sit on top of each other or in a row, then obviously an OLED will be better in this case. And although TCL claims that the C6K has an HVA panel that improves viewing angles and promises wonders, the results aren't actually as impressive as advertised on their website. And speaking of the smart features themselves, it really comes down to personal preference. Personally, I prefer the Samsung remote controls because they're smaller, more ergonomic, and more comfortable. They can also be charged via solar panel or USB Type-C port, although the TCL remote isn't bad in my opinion, and some people might like it. Let's say that in the smart TV arena, TCL probably has a slight advantage for many. It runs Android TV with Google TV, allowing you to directly install APK files. Samsung's Tizen operating system, on the other hand, isn't based on Android, so you can install APK files on it. What I sometimes dislike about Samsung, or more specifically its operating system, is that the apps vary greatly from country to country. For example, in many countries, the Gaming Hub feature for cloud gaming with Xbox isn't available, nor is Samsung TV Plus, among other apps. To access these, you'd have to change the country setting on your TV and use an external VPN app with an external device like a laptop as a bridge, which is quite cumbersome. So the solution would obviously be a TV box connected to Android, with one of its ports connected to HDMI. Therefore, in the smart TV arena, we could say that TCL would win for the vast majority of users. And in another area where the TCL surprisingly wins is in its audio system, specifically in terms of bass. While the Samsung promises a lot in theory, with its 4.2.2 channels and a supposed 70 watts of power, in practice I personally preferred the TCL because it has more bass and the experience feels a bit more immersive. The Samsung, while not bad and quite clear, definitely lacks bass. Here's a short test so you can hear the difference for yourself. So, to wrap things up, while the TCL C6K is very good in its price range, it's an entry-level QD mini LED TV from 2025 that's still highly recommended for the first few months of 2026. It will never be better than an OLED, not even compared to a more basic OLED, but it does have its strengths. One of them, as you just saw and heard, is the audio system. Another, of course, is the operating system, which many consider a major advantage. And the other point in favor of the TCL C6K is its better value for money. For many users, it will be a much more affordable option. And as I said before, it's a very good example of a QD mini LED TV. But it will never ever be better than an OLED in terms of graphics quality. It's that simple, no matter what others might try to tell you. That's all for now. I want to remind you that you can support my channel through Patreon by purchasing a membership that suits your budget, or by becoming a channel member directly on my YouTube channel. You can also make purchases through the referral links I've included in the description. This will greatly help me continue creating content. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, share it on social media, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.